Greetings, Scotty Reed here with a Black Talk Radio news report and commentary. In this particular segment, I want to take a listen to these comments and examine the veracity of these comments that was made by this black woman by the name of Candace Owens, who was on Fox and Friends, who was telling lies, talking about how she knows her history as a black person and that the NRA, the National Rifle Association, was founded as a civil rights organization to protect black people. Now, I don't know why people like to conflate civil rights with black people. I guess it's because of the federal laws that Dr. King and others who were looking for protections, federal government laws prohibiting racism and white supremacy, and those were known, they were able to get bills passed known as civil rights bills. You've had several civil rights bills, but civil rights belong to everybody in the United States. You have several different laws. You could even say that the Bill of Rights represents civil rights. And of course, nobody's going to claim that the Bill of Rights, that's the first 10 amendments of the U.S. Constitution, only applies to black people. But let's go ahead and take a listen to this segment that was on Fox and Friends. Let's go ahead and play that.
To paraphrase Chuck Schumer, we all know that Dianne Feinstein wants to take your guns as well. Someone else who knows that fact is Candace Owens, Director of Urban Engagement for Turning Point USA, the largest conservative student movement in America, and she joins us live on set. Candace, thanks for being here.
I'm so happy to be here for the first time.
So you heard those, yeah, welcome. It's great to have you. You heard those Democrats, they're not big fans of the NRA. You took a different approach recently as it pertains to and you're a former Democrat.
I am.
Just joined an organization that starts with N and ends with A.
Yes, I absolutely did. I just joined the NRA. I happen to fall into the window of people that knows my history. I'm a black American, and I know that the NRA started as a civil rights organization, training black Americans to arm themselves and defend themselves against the KKK.
Okay, let's stop it right there. So that's the ridiculous claim. I'm a person who knows my history. This woman don't know jack, all right? And I would say she should be ashamed of herself, but often these type of people, they know no shame. They're about collecting butter biscuits from their would-be masters and what have you. So this isn't the first time a black person has made such a ridiculous comment about the NRA. And I would say I'm not really anti-NRA, except that here lately with some of the racist ads that they put out, like for example, that ad that got a lot of attention where they were showing people protesting and calling them basically criminals and this, that, and the other. They chose to show black people protesting. All right, why not show all the white people of Antifa or any of these racist white terrorists out there in the streets, you know, tearing things up and what have you? No, they want to focus on black people because they are a bunch of suspected racists. But Harry Alford, who at one time, he was in the Republican Party of Milwaukee County. Well, I shouldn't say he was in the Republican Party, but the Republican Party of Milwaukee County posted on his website back in 2013 a video of this man making the same debunked claim. If you look at PolitiFact, you can see they have a pants on fire rating when he made the comment that the National Rifle Association was founded by religious leaders who wanted to protect freed slaves from the Ku Klux Klan. Now, if this was true, don't you think that we would know this, that this would, I know they had a lot of history, but I mean, if this was true, that's a pretty big deal. You'd think that this would be documented, we would hear about it, you know, that you would even have the NRA always talking about civil rights and this, that, and the other, but we don't, all right, because it's untrue. It's untrue. So the NRA on their own website talks about its founding as pulled up by PolitiFact. dismayed by the lack of marksmanship shown by their troops, Union veterans Colonel William C. Church and General George Wingate formed the National Rifle Association in 1871. The primary goal of the association would be to promote and encourage rifle shooting on a scientific basis, according to a magazine editorial written by Church. So one of the founders is talking about, hey, we had troops and they just had poor marksmen, meaning, we needed them to blow the heads off of these Confederate slavers, and they was missing way too often. So definitely we need to brush up on our marksmanship skills. And so that's how they founded the NRA. Had nothing to do with black people. Nothing whatsoever. Nothing to do with protecting or arming black people from the Ku Klux Klan. And in fact, I should point out that I am not down with all of the gun control rhetoric that I'm hearing. Do I think that we should have universal background checks? Yes, I do. I think that's common sense. I think that far too many people who shouldn't have guns, especially the mentally ill or suspected terrorists like Nicholas Cruz, who had a long history of violence and racist comments, and many people thought he would grow up, he would turn out to be a school shooter, but they ignored all that. But I do agree that there should be better background checks. There should be a uniform background check all across the United States, just one system for performing these background checks, because we see that you got different databases. The military keeps a database that they're supposed to submit to I think it could be the ATF, I'm not sure, or the Justice Department, whoever maintains this database where people are placed that have been stripped of their gun rights. Okay, so let me just move on here. We look at the history, and we could see that this was not founded to help black people. Now, there was only one black group that I know of, the Black Guard of North Carolina, which was based in Monroe, North Carolina. That's the only black self-defense group I ever heard of that armed themselves and got a charter from the NRA. That would be Robert F. Williams and his wife, Mabel Williams, who led that effort. Now, this is what they had to say about how they got their charter from the NRA. All right, so I pulled up docsouth.unc.edu. This is my source. And here is Mabel Williams giving an interview, and she is talking. She was asked questions about the National Rifle Association. All right, so it goes on talking about, the Klan. Mabel Williams said the Klan was very strong. The Klan was having rallies all over. Catfish Cole was on the rise. Catfish Cole he was having all kinds of rallies around Monroe. One rally, they reported that they had 5,000 people out at the rally, and Rob and Dr. Perry and a few of the other fellows went out to some of those Klan rallies and were there on the scene. And I think it's kind of unnerved the Klan people when they did it. But that was what kind of brought on the Rifle Club. We organized the Rifle Club, and we got a charter through the American Rifle Association. I think she meant the NRA. Okay. And black people having rifle clubs or promoting gun ownership is nothing new. Malcolm X even said the same thing, that black people need to form rifle clubs. She was asked the question, what did the Rifle Club do? We practiced shooting. We were all members. I was a member as well. We taught the kids how to shoot. We got our charter. We have our little meetings, and that was the backbone of our defense group. Again, it was known as the Black Guard. And it was like a NRA type thing. says the person who's interviewing her. She says it was affiliated. It was a branch of the National Rifle Association, meaning they had a charter. All right. Now, she said, the person said something unclear about white people. Maybe perhaps they were asking if the NRA knew that they were not white. All right. Mabel Williams says they didn't know for sure because when Robert sent off for the charter, he had himself as an author. He had Dr. Perry as a doctor. He had he had one of our officers, McDowell, as a businessman. He had, I think, the women he put down as housewives, and he put construction contractor for the construction workers. And we got our first charter like that, and it's really fun. The year that Rob passed away, the National Rifle Association wanted him to come to Texas to speak about how we survive in the South with guns. So, again, they did get a NRA charter, but they had to use deception in order to get that charter. And the NRA did not provide them with any kind of training, any kind of support. Nothing was said that when that community was attacked by the Klan and by police, all right, nothing was said by the NRA in their defense. And you're attacking one of our chartered groups or something like that. They said no such thing. All right, so it goes on to say, Mabel Williams said he was going to go, but his cancer got the better of him and he was unable to go. But he sent a message to them which they read. And I have a tape that they, at their anniversary celebration, they talked about Robert Williams and how his rifle club allowed them to survive in the racist state of North Carolina. Then it says laughter. So they were more than willing to try to use Robert Williams as a black token, like they use many black people as tokens, as they're using Candace Owens as a token and what have you. But the truth of the matter is, Mabel Williams said, I'm sure when we joined that they didn't know. And the years after then, had they known we were a black group, they would have revoked our charter. Okay? So that's the only group that I know of that had a NRA charter. And they use deception in their job titles in order to get that charter, to get the impression that they were white middle-class people to get that charter. Now, again, you got Candace Owens claiming that the NRA was founded as a civil rights organization to protect black people against the Klan. Nothing could be further from the truth. And in fact, it does have in its history where they have advocated to strip black people of gun ownership. And that the first gun control in this country actually goes back to the colonies. For example, if I pull up the Virginia slave codes of 1705, some of the bullet points says it established new property rights for slave owners, allowed for the legal free trade of slaves with protections granted by the courts, established separate courts of trial, prohibited blacks, regardless of free status, from owning firearms. Whites could not be employed by blacks and allowed for the apprehension of suspected runaways. So we got right there in the Virginia slave code some of the first gun control legislation that was aimed at black people. So that's why I tell black people, you should be cautious about aligning yourself with these gun control advocates. Like they mentioned Dianne Feinstein and others. There are people who do want you to be disarmed with no means to defend yourself, whether that's from these racist terrorists or whether it's from police. Same thing, might as well say. Especially if you look at the history of Monroe, North Carolina, and how the Klan was often given an escort by police into the black community so they could terrorize the community. But there was an article that showed up in the New Republic also in 2013. And the NRA was saying gun control is racist, trying to just come up with some talking points, But it is racist. And Adam Winkler wrote this article in the New Republic. Let me just read a little bit. National Rifle Association President David King stirred controversy Saturday by insisting that gun control's origins were racist. You know, when you go back in history, King told the Daily Caller, the initial wave of gun laws was instituted after the Civil War to deny blacks the ability to defend themselves. King's history is off by at least a century. Gun control existed in the American colonies and in the founding era, but nonetheless, King points to an ugly truth about American history. Gun control has historically been used for racist purposes, and the NRA's president should know. His organization was intimately involved in this history, promoting gun control laws that were tainted with racism. Gun control, like many other areas of law in American history, has been shaped by prejudice. In the colonies before the Revolution and in the states right after, racially discriminatory gun laws were commonplace. Fearing revolts, lawmakers enacted statutes barring slaves from possessing firearms or other weapons. That ban was often applied equally to free blacks who otherwise enjoyed most rights, lest they join in an uprising against the slave system. Where blacks were allowed to possess arms, as in Virginia in the early 1800s, they first had to obtain permission from local officials. So, again, this woman don't know history. She certainly don't know black history. Well, I shouldn't say that, but she don't know black history when it comes to the NRA and gun control or gun rights, as has been documented. The NRA has always been for the disarming of black people. And this goes back to colonial history. Now, what's some of the other black groups that participated in armed self-defense? We have the Black Panther Party, for self-defense, which later just became the Black Panther Party. We know that they made the mistake of walking onto the California Legislative Capitol building's floor with their guns. And right away, you had the governor of California pass gun control legislation because they didn't want to see black folks with guns and walking up on white people like that. They did not like the activities of the Black Panther Party. Now tell me this, when have you ever heard of any kind of news stories from back in the day about the NRA defending the Black Panthers' right to armed self-defense? Then you have another group that started in Louisiana called the Deacons for Defense. This was black U.S. military veterans who formed rifle clubs. They were known again as the Deacons for Defense, and they did not have an NRA charter. So this woman, Miss Candace Owens, needs to go back to the history books and do a little bit more studying. So she does not know her history, and the NRA was not founded as no civil rights organization to protect newly freed enslaved Africans. All right, this has been Scotty Reed with a Black Talk Radio news report and commentary. Please support independent black media by making a donation today to the U.S.-based nonprofit Black Talk Media Project.